Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another Midnight Mirage history lesson. And it is your friend Red Stick Mirage. What's good? What's happening? So just for the introduction to this tape, I want to send some power and love energy to the people down in Florida and the friends and associates of the people that lost their life in this recent tragic situation where you had a quote-unquote Caucasian racist shooter go into a public facility and he killed three random people. And those three random people were so-called black people, or really indigenous or Aboriginal American people. And this guy was a self-proclaimed quote-unquote, I guess, racist. And he had a issue or some type of a problem with so-called black people. So, the influence and the inspiration for this tape is basically for those of us that are Aboriginal people or so-called black Americans, for us to use history to glue ourselves together. Just like in the gangs, the Bloods can relate to each other because they have the same flag, they got the same codes, the same principles. The GDs can relate to each other because they come from the same sets, they got the same flag, the same code. So believe it or not, and whether you want it to be this way or not, being a so-called black person, a so-called black American, no matter what your skin shade is, this is the so-called gang or tribe of your people. And you have to have a way to, identify with each other. That's the glue that, makes people stick together. It can't be anything superficial, And that's why even with the gangs, the glue in the gangs is not even a gorilla glue. It's more like that Dollar General Elmer's glue. You know what I'm saying? Them weak Dollar Tree glue sticks. That's not the same as no gorilla glue. So the gangs in the streets, they using more of a weak Dollar Tree glue to glue themselves together because it's only based on a lot of criminality and a lot of BS ultimately. But us, uniting and identifying and gluing ourselves together with history, real organic history that pertains to us, that's like using the gorilla glue. So we need to get out of all this using this weak Dollar Tree glue sticks to glue ourselves together with things like, quote unquote street code, or being in some quote unquote gang, or because you're from this part of, the town or something like that. All these superficial things, this stuff is not strong enough to glue us together when the heat really comes. Another thing, I want to salute the brothers Tariq Nasheed and Red Supreme. The brothers Tariq Nasheed and my boy Red Supreme. I want to salute both of them because I heard some of their broadcasting on this subject, and I liked how those brothers were coming. So you all go show them some love and watch their videos on this topic, Red Supreme and also Tariq Nasheed. But we got to use something real to glue ourselves together, and the only gorilla glue that's going to do it is our real organic history. Okay, so that's why I'm using history in everything I do, because that's the gorilla glue to stick us together. Because in these times, I'm telling you right now, that's all you're going to have. You're going to have the niggas that really rock with you, and the other so-called black Americans that really, really rock with you, man. And the truth is that, we're going to need as many of our people as we can have. And all you need to get is the ones that are around you that you cool with. So this ain't no thing where we trying to run out and save the world or run out and try to click up with every so-called black American, because the truth is that a lot of our people are under mind control, and a lot of our people have been turned into zombies, and they are enemies, and they are part of those, dead Israelites, dead-minded Israelites that need to be swallowed up and bitten by the serpents. You know what I'm saying? So, before I move forward, I just wanted to say that, this is just a time to, thinking more of a group economics, group business, group warfare. In other words, and this is very serious for you so-called black men out there, get out of this mentality of this independent lone wolf that's going to get your ass killed. And if you do acquire a lot of resources, money, and assets, it's easier to guard something when it's multiple men versus it's just you by yourself. All right. So you brothers need to team up with each other and organize, and consolidate. And whatever it is you all choose to do, that's your business. But, niggas need to work together, basically. Okay. So something else that I thought about, too, with this recent shooting in Jacksonville, Florida, from this so-called Caucasian racist shooter, Very interesting how it's around the same time as the March on Washington, the 60th anniversary. And it's also very interesting how this is during a full moon week. So you have a full moon, which ultimately represents something being revealed that was once concealed, such as history, because history has been concealed. But a full moon represents something being revealed. At the beginning of the month, there is a new moon, where it's the dark moon. You can't see it. You can see the silhouette of it behind the clouds, but none of its light is showing. And throughout the entire month, it goes from the new moon to the crescent moon to the half moon to the 3/4 to the full moon. And just on a symbolic esoteric, using a symbolic esoteric metaphor, when it gets to the full moon, that just represents something being revealed. So in the new moon, in the beginning, the dark moon, it was concealed. And from that concealment, there was confusion. Okay. You didn't necessarily know something was going on behind the scenes. You didn't necessarily know what the real history was. There's a lot of deception, a lot of mirages. But by the full moon, you go to the Isra mirage. You get the spiritual revelation. You get to actually know what is the truth. Okay. So there is, just very interesting to me how it's during the full moon, this shooting, and also this March on Washington's 60th anniversary. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into a history lesson on a few things, but it's going to center around the word Amaru Meru. Okay. The history lesson is going to center on the word Amaru Meru. All right. Now, we know this country to be called America. And when we say America, we usually mean the Americas. So that's North America, Central America, and South America. And all of those comprise as the Americas. Okay. Now, contemporary education is teaching students that the word America comes from a foreign explorer by the name of Amerigo Vespucci. The first red flag with that is, of course, a foreigner may name a place that they have newly arrived and newly discovered, something that is familiar with them. But the Aboriginal people of that land had their own names for that place. Okay. Now, you have to remember that our people were in various tribes, various confederacies throughout North America. So there was not like one name maybe that everybody used. So I'm not going to sit here and BS you like that. Different tribes may have had different names for what they called this great place. But the term America is actually indigenous to this land. And it goes all the way back to ancient South America and the civilization of the ancient Peruvians, ancient Olmec, the ancient Maya, the ancient Incas. So that is what we're going to realize and get a revelation on in this tape, is that the word America is actually aboriginal to this land. It is our word. The word America is has a close relationship with us. You calling yourself an American is appropriate because the Webster's 1828 dictionary, meaning when the Europeans came to the Americas and they created a dictionary for defining, phenomenon in this new land, they call the land and they call the people of the land Americans. And their definition was an American was an aboriginal person of the copper colored races found on the land. Okay. Now, those copper colored races are so-called Black American people. All right. So the Europeans, when they came here, they called you an American because you were the aboriginal person of the land. All right. And that word American, more than likely, they learned it from us. And it was being used in various ways, because you also have to remember that vowels are interchangeable. A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y. Remember, we learned that from school. Vowels are interchangeable. A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y. But consonants usually remain constant. So whenever we have words, those words typically comprise of vowels and consonants. And the vowels can be changed, but the word will retain its original meaning. And that's so for the word Amaru, Meru, or America. And that's also the same for the word Meru, Meru, or more. Now, another thing that will be revealed in this production is that the word more or the word Moorish does not come from Europe, and it does not come from the so-called Middle East, and it does not come from North Africa. The word Moor or Meru or Moorish comes from Amaru Meru. So the word Moor is the word Meru or Meru. American, Moor, Amaru. All right. So the word Moorish actually is an Aboriginal American word pertaining back to Amaru Meru. And if you do not believe me, when this video is over, I want you to go and Google in your free time Blackamoor Indian. I want you to Google Blackamoor Indian. And what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of cigar statues and different images of so-called Black Americans dressed in what you may consider to be so-called Native American attire. For example, they have one called a Moor with emerald clusters. And a lot of you all have seen this picture because I've used it in the thumbnail before. And this actually is a image of Chief Saturia of the Aboriginal Timucua. All right. The people in Florida found by St. Augustine and the foreigners. And if you look at the picture of Chief Saturia or the image of him, the statue, he looks like a so-called black man in all of you all's communities. Matter of fact, I have a friend who looks just like him that I grew up with. But Chief Saturia was actually the king of the Timucua, all right, or the Aboriginal people of Florida. OK, so the word Blackamoor, the word Moor, the word Meru, the word Moorish. This is why you hear some people use that word Moor or Moorish or Meru, and they associate that with the American Indian because it goes back to Amaru Meru. So remember the vowels in the word Moor or Meru or Meru. You have E and you have U and you have O, but they can all be interchangeable. OK, so understand that the Aboriginal people of the Americas, the ancient Atlanteans, after what they call the so-called flood, which was just a variety of events. All right. You had people that were from, quote unquote, Atlantis or the Americas, ancient America, old America, set up civilization in what we know as so-called Europe and the so-called Mediterranean, the Iberian Peninsula. And they call them the Picts, the Iberians, and some of the other people of so-called Europe. And they will tell you that a portion of these people come from so-called Atlantis. Atlantis is just another code word for ancient America. All right. So that's, just another brief history lesson. All right. So what we want to do next is we want to think on our families. All right. Because I want you to understand, too, that when it comes to trying to really figure out who you are, once again, you don't got to reinvent the wheel. What you need to do is go talk to some of your family members. Go and figure out where your parents, your grandparents, where they're from. Research the Aboriginal tribes in that land, that area, or that state, wherever it may be. Research some of the rivers and look at what the names of those rivers are or major bodies of water, because we would name the river after who we are, as tribes. And you should also research and keep your last name in hand as well, because the last names that we have, believe it or not, some of them are original Aboriginal American names, and some of them are anglicized or American words, but Europeanized. OK, so when I use that term anglicized, what I mean is that they'll take an Aboriginal American word, but they will translate it into English. But it's still that original American word is just translated into English. So most of our last names, believe it or not, did not come from a foreign Caucasian man. And they did not come from a foreign melanated person from so-called Europe. A lot of these names we already had because we would name ourselves based on locations we lived. We would name ourselves based on a skill set or a particular service that our family provided. So in other words, the people would name themselves. These names didn't come out of nowhere. People name themselves, so we can name ourselves whatever we want to. Okay. But these names usually have a definition or a meaning. All right. So just because someone's last name was, let's say, Woods or Waters, like, for example, remember I gave you all the example of the name Rivers and Waters. Like you have Maxine Waters, the politician from California, and you have Doc Rivers, the basketball player who used to be for the Atlanta Hawks. Doc Rivers and Maxine Waters are Aboriginal Americans. But notice how their last names, it pertains to, you know, a body of water. You know what I'm saying? A river, or as in Maxine Waters, her literal last name is Waters. So is there a particular place on the planet that they have to be from in order for them to have the last name Rivers or Waters? Is that really a European last name? Are there not water and rivers everywhere across the entire earth? So you cannot use that last name to specifically figure out where they're from. Even if the original word has been anglicized to where we're calling it rivers and water today, nevertheless, that still doesn't give you a geographic location of where that person is from. Just like the word Moor. Just because somebody is calling themselves a Moor, that does not mean that they're from Europe. And it does not mean that they're from the Middle East or Northwest Africa. And it also does not mean that they're an Arab or that they practice Islam. All it means is that they are a melanated person that descends from the original cradle of civilization. That's all it means. It means an original person who is a descendant, a man or woman of the original people who created civilization on this earth. That's what the word means. Because what you're going to also learn in a little bit is that not only does the word Amaru Meru pertain to the Americas, but based on ancient Incan mythology, the Incans thought that their ancestors, not thought, but this is what their understanding was. The Incans had an understanding that their ancestors came from a spiritual realm. All right. And Amaru Meru actually is also a spiritual figure. Just like how in the Bible you have a Moses or Abraham. These are just historical icons or historical figures that are being created to use as an archetype to try to explain a somewhat obscure history of a people's origin. So it's not necessarily saying that Abraham, Moses, or, you know, that these are real people, but it's trying to give you an understanding of the story. Like, for example, Abraham basically is just talking about a male progenitor from the ancient civilization of Mesopotamia, of Chaldea, of Ur. That was a real man. Now, was his name Abraham? More than likely, no. But they're talking about the travel and the journey of those particular people. And that's the same for Amaru Meru, because the Incan have a story where Amaru Meru is a leader of a people who come from a ancient civilization that actually was destroyed. And they started a new civilization in the Americas as what we know of as the Incan or Peruvian Empire and the Olmec Empire. But they said that these original people that created that pyramid civilization in South and Central America, that they came from Lemuria or Atlantis. So they say that the original people who created civilization in the Americas, the Meru, they say that they come from Atlantis and Lemuria. All right. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap up the point about the last names. You know, so we just talked about the rivers and the waters and how that's not really telling you exactly where that person is from. You got rivers and waters in North America. So if you meet an Aboriginal person and they have the name that's from North America, one of the 50 so-called states, and they have the last name Rivers or Waters, then you need to then ask them, like, you know, well, where their grandparents are from, because more than likely that's the area where the rivers or waters that they're talking about. All right. So I'll give you an example real quick. So let's take Blackbeard. So I already told you all a little bit about on my mother's line, the Aboriginal people of Georgia. So now a little bit about my father's line. So on my father's line, My father, he used to talk a lot about his grandmother, his mother's mom. All right. So now I'm telling you a little bit about Blackbeard's father. So basically my grandmother, my mother's father. All right. My father's mother, rather, excuse me. So my dad, he would talk about his grandmother a lot. His grandmother, her name was Minnie Schultz. All right. Minnie Schultz. Minnie as in like, you know how you got Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse. So her first name was Minnie and her last name was Schultz. Choates. Choates. Her name was Minnie Schultz. Now, my grandmother, my father's mom, she grew up in Georgia. Okay. But, a lot of black people, so-called black people, they was doing the Great Migration during the early 20th century, in the mid 20th century. So my great grandparents on my father's side, they were coming from the South, from like Georgia and Mississippi, because my dad's grandfather, meaning my great grandfather, my grandmother's father on my father's side, he was from Mississippi. So when I researched a little bit more about, my father's people, what I did was I came across the last name Schultz being pertaining, to the Aboriginal people of the Tusalagi or the Ananuia of Georgia. The name Schultz is a Cherokee Creek Ananuia Tusalagi name of the tribal people of Georgia, so-called Georgia today. So Blackbeard's grandmother and the great grandmother, they have the last name that is a Cherokee Creek Tusalagi Ananuia name. Okay, so that's a basic example, So that means my father's grandmother, her father, he was a so-called Cherokee Tusalagi Ananuia man. Okay, and that's where the last name came from. And once again, my grandmother was from Georgia, but they moved to the Midwest. They moved to Ohio, but they were from Georgia. And we all know that the Cherokee or the Tusalagi Ananuia, the real people, the original people, we know that they're from present day, quote unquote, Georgia. All right. So that is how I was also able to trace things pertaining to my lineage. Because if you were to see my grandmother, my father's mother, she looks just like what they would call a so-called Cherokee. All right. But she also looks like what they would call a so-called black woman, because so-called black people are the Cherokee, they are the Creek, they are the Seminole, the Choctaw, the Yamasee, or whatever tribe it is that you come from. We are those original people. All right. So what I want to do now is we're going to read two things. We're going to read in my book, America, a Moorish Paradise of the Plumed Serpent. And we're also going to read a basic article on Amaru Meru. So we'll just get a little bit more of a background on that word. All right. And that phenomenon. Now, before we move forward, what I'm going to do in the comment section is I'm going to put a comment and leave some instructions, because what we'll do, I got some more books and we're going to have a new Midnight Mirage book price. OK, so the books now are going to be $30, 30. All right. So the Midnight Mirage book price will be $30. But if I see you in person, I'll give it to you for $25. The only reason I got to do 30 online is, of course, to pay the third party distributor for me to deposit the money. All right. So you know how they'll take out a little bit. So that's what we're going to do. All right. And what I'll do is I'll leave the instructions in the comment section. And if you're interested, what you'll end up doing is you will send me an email to midnightmirage009@gmail.com. midnightmirage009@gmail.com. You will send me an email with your name and address and letting me know that you want the book. And after I correspond with you, you then will send $30 to a Cash App or whatever it is I send you, whatever link I send you. It may be a Cash App, or I may just tell you a Cash App name, and you'll send it to that. And of course, after that, I'll send the book. So I got some more books in. I forgot I wanted to mention that. And the price will be for $30. All right. Online. So right now, we're going to go into my book and we're going to do a little bit of reading, because I want you all to get an understanding of us in North America that are from these various tribes. You have a connection to the ancient civilizations of Central America and South America. Yes, because what we know of as the Mississippian culture, because that's another thing too, like all of us, like that's from North America, you would be considered a Mississippian. Let me say that again, because this is actually the word that they robbed us of. And that civilization actually is the civilization we come from. Because you know how they make you think that Native Americans were just these people running around in the woods with no clothes on. They were these hunter and gatherers. They were these nomads. You know, they had these teepees. They were always on the move. They never had a fixed home, etc., right? All of that is false. No matter if you lived on the Eastern Seaboard, no matter if you were from the Midwest, no matter if you were from the Southeast, all the way to California, the Mississippian culture or the Mississippian kingdom or the Mississippian empire is the ancient American empire of North America. So that is exactly where we come from. And these tribes, such as, like I say, the Choctaw, like I'll just take myself, for example, because, you know, what it is we need to learn, you know, who we are and then get familiar with that. Because like I say, this is going to be the gorilla glue to really get us to stick together. But it's understanding on your mother's side and your father's side to the best of your ability after you have done due diligence and after you've done your best to get the empirical research, etc. You knowing what particular tribes to associate with yourself. So, for example, with myself, I know to associate the ancient Alabama, the ancient Mobilian, the ancient Cherokee, the ancient Onondaga, the ancient Tusalagi. I know to associate myself with that on my father's side. And on my mother's side, the Muskogee Creek, the Hitchiti Creek, the Uchi Creek, I know to associate them with my maternal side. So that's how you have to do it, because it's not going to be one tribe, okay? It more than likely will be multiple tribes. But either way it goes, all of these tribes that we come from, no matter where we're from in North America, all of them are Mississippians. So that's what I really consider myself. I consider myself a Mississippian American. That is what I consider myself. All right. Because the Mississippians are an Aboriginal so-called Negro group of people of North America. All right. And the Mississippian culture or Mississippian civilization was actually inspired. And a lot of the scientific principles, a lot of the information and knowledge used to create and build the Mississippian empire comes from the ancient Maya, the ancient Olmec, the ancient Inca. Yes. Because if you look at a lot of our homes and the style of homes we would build in the Mississippian kingdom throughout North America, they're shaped in the same style as the pyramids of Chichen Itza and the different Maya complex and some of the pyramids of the Olmec and the various structures of the Olmec. All right. So the Mississippian empire and the Mississippian culture is related to the ancient Maya culture of Central America, the ancient Olmec culture, the ancient Inca culture. All of these are related, and all of these come from the same, we'll call, ethnic group of so-called Black Americans. Yes, this is a fact. This is a fact. Because remember, when I say American, I mean North, Central, and South. Yes. So you got so-called Black people that are in South America today that descend from these people. You got so-called Black people that are in Central America. And you got so-called Black people in North America that have always been here. All right. So that's what it is. It's the Mississippian culture in North American civilization. It is the Maya Olmec culture of Central America. It is the ancient Incan culture, the Peruvian culture of South America. So I'm going to say it one more time in order, and then we're going to read. So you'll understand exactly where your people come from. And when you want to learn about, well, what kind of civilization did we have? What kind of food did we eat? What kind of sports did we play? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You'll know which ones to go study. So study the Mississippian culture, study the Maya Olmec culture, and study the Incan Peruvian culture. Okay. So what we're going to do right now in my own book is I'm going to read on page 14 and 15 just to elaborate a little bit more on our point. The descendants of the Atlanteans became who we know of as the Incas, Mayas, Aztec, and other American autochthones. The step pyramid and mound civilizations in America are older than those found in Africa. The Atlantean Empire had a trade system and ruled the seas. For various reasons, different groups of Americans went over into what we call Europe and Africa during the times of Pangaea. Pyramid masonry is an old American science and known by the custodians who preserve the knowledge from Meru, or the cradle of civilization. The American builders of Memphis, Tennessee, the mound builders, and Memphis, Egypt, were using similar technology at the same time. America is not only a land, but also a nation and a bloodline. Some of us are American by blood, but most by being naturalized. The primary definition states the Americans are, quote, copper-colored people. That would mean the first Americans look more like the color of a penny. They have a shiny earth tone coating, just like those made from the dark matter clay at the beginning of time. Old pictures of Americans show them wearing feathers and tobacco skirts sometimes. They could easily blend in with the fall-autumn woods of the southeastern North American states. Understand the difference between the autochthonous American who sprung literally from the soil and the foreigner. Now, we're going to pause right here and elaborate on this a little bit. First of all, this thing is facts about how we would blend with the autumn and the fall. It's been hot as hell in Georgia, man. So I'm very glad that it's going into the fall season in the autumn. But let's analyze this. So it says that America is not only a land, but it's a nation and a bloodline. So that means that if you don't descend from any of these Aboriginal tribes of the Americas, and you're not connected to any of these civilizations through those ancestors, you're not really an American. You may be a United States citizen. You may have been naturalized, but you're not really an American. Like right now, like the other day, for example, when I was working out, I was at the gym. And there was a young man from Ethiopia. He was a doctor. And me and him were talking about history for a little bit. And I asked him, I said, if I go to Ethiopia right now and I'm living there, and let's say I have children, does that make me and my children Ethiopian? And he said no. And he's correct. And I said, that's the same here for the Americas. Just because somebody comes to North America and they become a United States citizen, that does not make them an American. And he agreed. Because anybody with common sense and common logic can see that. So you got a lot of foreigners today calling themselves Americans, but they're not Americans. All right. They're just not. When we say American, we're talking about somebody that's from North America. All right. So that's the first point. And the second thing I wanted to say is this. You'll know the real autochthonous Americans because in the South, whether you're from the Carolinas, certain parts of Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, Louisiana, etc., Mississippi, once it changes into the fall, autumn time, and those leaves start to turn yellow, brown, the reddish colors. So when you go in the woods, all you have is just the brown trees around you. You got the brown leaves. You got the yellow leaves. You got the reddish leaves. A real Aboriginal American person, their skin tone can actually camouflage with the woodlands of the South in North America. That's a fact. And our people come in all shades, whether they are a light copper color or a quote unquote light skinned person, red bone quote unquote person, all the way to the dark mahogany. We can all blend into the forest, into the woods, especially if we put on clothing that matches the woods. We will blend in. And believe it or not, that's how a lot of the hunting was done. And a lot of the Yamasee, a lot of the Seminoles, a lot of the Red Sticks, the Creeks. This is how we was fucking them up too when we would be fighting in the woods during the autumn and the fall, because we would blend in. This is also why you would see us paint our faces those dark colors sometimes. So we would blend right in and camouflage right in with the woods. And this was a warfare tactic. The modern day so-called Siberian, Mongoloid, Native American, he cannot blend in the woods unless he fully covers himself in paint. But our natural skin tone blends right in with it. All right. When we visit the lesson of vowels, We know that they are interchangeable, where consonants usually remain constant. The letters A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y can be arranged however the user sees fit in conjunction with consonants for spelling, but the root consonants of the word will stay the same. The descendants of Meru or Amaru are also known as Moors. In Moor, we see that the E and the U in Meru have been switched for two of the letter O. This gives us the term Meru American or Moorish American. Using Moorish as an adjective helps historians specify the autochthonous copper-colored American who descends from those who inhabited the cradle of civilization, Meru or Amaru or ancient Atlantis. Okay, so really when you hear Amaru, they're talking about the descendants of Atlantis that started the original American civilization that we know of as the Incan Peruvian civilization, that we know of as the Olmec Maya civilization, that we know of as the Mississippian civilization. All right. So now what we're going to do is read this article, something that I just found online to give us more of an elaboration on the Amaru and the different mythologies associated with it. All right. So this came from Ancient Origins, Reconstructing the Story of Humanity's Past. It was updated on February the 18th, 2023. And it is called Unraveling the Enigma of Amaru, the Mysterious Gate of the Gods. Now, let me say this. Now, because you're going to hear me using that term, the gods and ancestors, a lot. These gods and ancestors that this is pertaining to are talking about the original human beings that we descend from and whatever original civilization that they had that we know as Amaru or Meru, but also the spiritual origin of our people. Because the truth is this. Don't get caught up and stop at the fact that you are an aboriginal person to the earth or you are an autochthonous person of the earth. That's true. We are original people of the earth. We are original men and women of the earth. But it also, to me at least, is inquisitive on spiritually, where do we come from? And what I do like is how the Bible says that when the original man was created out of the earth, the first autochthonous man or human beings will say that their bodies were fashioned or created from the material of the earth. But there was a spiritual element to make them a living soul. So they really were the living soul. And you should question, where does that living soul come from and where did it come from? Did it come from a spiritual plane where we were already living conscious beings in existence? And through the creation of the first aboriginal human, we started to be born in physical flesh? This is just something for you to ponder on, okay? And this is if you are an original human being. If you one of these artificial humans, then, you know, you got a different story. But I'm talking about our people. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, fuck all that. But anyway, let's read. Also, too, if you can see this picture at the top right here, this is actually a stone carving in Peru of a sighting that's also called Amaru. And this is a spiritual gateway of the gods. And they say that there is a particular spiritual frequency that this place emits. Another thing interesting is that a lot of the monuments that we will build have spiritual frequencies and power. For example, the pyramid of Chichen Itza. If you research it, not only did it have certain acoustic abilities where if you would clap in front of the staircasing of Chichen Itza, it would make the sound frequency or the sound of the Quetzal bird. So you know how in South America, the pyramid is dedicated to Quetzalcoatl, all right? Or the plumed serpent, who is basically like once again, like a created, you know, iconic ancestral figure for us to explain to the people where we come from. Quetzalcoatl is also another version of the people that come from Atlantis, those original people. But When you clap in front of the pyramid, it makes a sound like an acoustic. It makes a sound like the Quetzal bird. And also during these solstices, which happen, no, excuse me, during the equinox, which happen twice a year, on the steps of the pyramid, right when the sun is at its highest point, you can actually see the body of the serpent coming down the steps, and the head of it is at the end of the pyramid or at the foot of the pyramid, which is something very interesting. So there is something to these pyramids and these structures and these temples that are in North America, Central America, and South America. I'm not gonna lie to y'all, it's very enigmatic. There's something to it. You know what I'm saying? And it's worth investigating. So now let's read our article. In 1996, Jose Luis Delgado Mamani, a local tour guide in Peru, discovered an ancient archaeological site carved into Hayumarca Mountain near Lake Titicaca in the Andes Mountains of Peru, near the border with Bolivia. It became known as Amaru Meru, or the Puerta de Hayumarca, the Gate of the Gods. It is one of the most enigmatic and controversial archaeological sites in South America. There are a number of theories about the origin and purpose of the Gate of the Gods, but its true function and significance remain a mystery, just like most of these artifacts that they found in the Americas and also these major structures. Lake Titicaca is the largest lake in South America and the ancestral home of several indigenous communities, including the Aymara and the Quechua people. These communities have a rich history and culture, and their traditions and beliefs are deeply intertwined with the lake and its surroundings. There are many islands and villages on the lake, including the famous Uros Islands, which are floating islands made of reeds. The lake is also home to several ancient archaeological sites, including the ruins of Tiwanaku, which is an ancient pre-Columbian city located near the southeastern shore of the lake. The site is believed to date back to as early as 400 BC and is considered one of the most important archaeological sites in South America. So as you can see right here, what we're going into is that, you know, by this lake in South America, it's the largest lake. There was a particular carving found by a man, an archaeologist, in 1996. And we're going to learn more about this. All right. So let's keep up. Close to Lake Titicaca is Hayumarca Mountain, which is believed to have been a place of worship and pilgrimage for the Inca civilization. I'm going to reread that because now we're going into, you know, these original people from so-called Atlantis or so-called Lemuria, some of these tribes that I guess settled in South America by Peru that created what we know of as the Inca civilization. That's what we're going into. It says close to Lake Titicaca is Hayumarca Mountain, which is believed to have been a place of worship and pilgrimage for the Inca civilization. It is here that one can find Amaru Meru, the Gate of the Gods. The large door-like structure carved out of the Hayumarca Mountain near Lake Titicaca is known as Amaru Meru, or the Gate of the Gods. This mysterious structure is considered to be one of the most enigmatic and controversial, archaeological sites in South America. The Gate of the Gods is carved out of solid rock and measures approximately 7 meters or 23 feet high and 7 meters wide. It has a T-shaped design and it features a circular depression at the center, which some believe could have been used for ceremonial or astronomical purposes. The site also includes a small carved tunnel next to the main structure. What I can tell you is for certain, or for sure rather, that part of the use for it was ceremonial and astronomical. All right. But it could have been more into it. It could have been more to it than that, rather. Excuse me. The structure has been shrouded in mystery and myth. So that's another thing. You have to remember that our history, you all, is shrouded in mystery and myth. So when it comes to biblical history and mythology, when it comes to American history and mythology, when it comes to Mesopotamian history and mythology, you got to understand that your real organic history is infused into that. And in order to tell these stories, the wise, intelligent people of the past, they had to create certain archetypes that the human conscious and subconscious would understand in order to absorb and receive the knowledge of the history. Okay, so don't always get caught up was Adam a real person? That does not matter. Don't get caught up on was Kulku Khan a real person? That does not matter. Okay, that really doesn't matter. It says the structure has been shrouded in mystery and myth for centuries, and there are a number of theories about its origin and purpose. Some believe that it was created by an ancient pre-Incan civilization, while others suggest that it may have been constructed by extraterrestrial beings. According to Native American legends, heroes of the past went through that door to meet their gods. By going through the door, they gained immortality and a life next to the gods. The stories also mention that a few of those men returned to Earth through the gate with their gods in order to inspect their kingdoms. The gate was a gateway to the land of the gods. The concept of a stargate or a portal, a gate where someone can travel to different places, is prominent in other legends, such as those of the Sumerians. Now we're going to pause on that. I'm going to get some water real quick. So not only did it say that the history is shrouded in mystery and myth, but it says that some believe that it was created by an ancient pre-Incan civilization, while others suggested that it may have been constructed by extraterrestrial beings. Let me ask y'all a question. Which one makes more logical common sense? Were these structures created by extraterrestrial beings and aliens? Or more than likely, were they created by a pre-Incan civilization? Because when it says pre-Incan, it's talking about Atlantis or Lemuria. Once again, were those civilizations really named Atlantis and Lemuria? Probably not. Was Quetzalcoatl a real person? Probably not. But the history and the information infused in these mythologies and stories comes from an organic, real reality, a real chronological series of events or phenomenons of human history. All right. It next go on to say that according to Native American or Aboriginal American, Meru American history, or legends rather, excuse me, that heroes went to and fro through this door. All right. So it was seen to be somewhat like of a doorway or a portal. All right. And that's more of the spiritual implication of it, or the spiritual aspect of it, the energy aspect of it. All right. So I know for certain that it was used for astrological purposes and for ceremonial purposes, just like the pyramids in the Maya and the Yucatan of Chichen Itza. You know, and I've done some research on them. Yeah, they were used for ceremonial purposes, and they were also used for astrological purposes to create calendars and to track time. But there was also a higher energy aspect or a higher spiritual aspect of it that I really can be humble enough to admit I don't understand. So I'll be a fool to sit here and tell you that, you know, I know what it was or I know what it wasn't. But what I can tell you is this. I've read a lot of information, but when I studied the ancient structures of, you know, the Olmec, the Maya, these mounds in North America, it leaves me a little bit bewildered. You know what I'm saying? Like, it really let me think, like, how the hell did these people do this? You know what I'm saying? I honestly be thinking that, you know, like as I'm reading this shit, and you know, because it'd be amazing to me. You know what I'm saying? It does. It really makes me wonder, like, how did they create a lot of this stuff? All right, let's keep going. We're almost done. Another legend describes the story of Amaru Meru, an Inca priest of the Temple of the Seven Rays. It is said that in order to escape the Spanish conquistadors, He left the temple with a golden disc, known as the key of the gods of the seven rays, and went to hide in the mountain of Hayumarka. Amaru eventually used the golden disc during a ceremony with other priests. The door opened and he went through it. According to that legend, light has been emitting through the tunnel that he went through. So there is another legend or story in South America of an Incan priest named Amaru, and that he had the ability to go through a portal using this golden disc that he had. Okay. So remember when I told you all, Amaru, this is trying to give you all a introduction to the men and women who survived that pre-Incan civilization that they talking about, which we know of as Atlantis and Lemuria, and how they created the original civilization in the Americas called the Inca civilization, the Maya civilization, the Olmec civilization, and then later on the Mississippian civilization. Okay. So Amaru is talking about the descendants of the pre-Incan, the pre-Olmec, the pre-Mayan, the pre-Mississippian civilization that we know of as Atlantis and Lemuria, which those are just created words to try to help us understand this older civilization that was before what we call the quote unquote flood, or before what we'll call the reset of history. All right. So the word Amaru is an Aboriginal American word, and it comes from the Incan priest or the people who came from the pre-Incan civilization. All right. That we know of as Atlantis and Lemuria, which once again, these are created words and a created story to try to help explain basically that, look, y'all, the Olmec civilization and the Inca civilization actually came from something else. That's basically all they saying. Let me put it in regular nigga terms for you. All it's saying is that, look, y'all, yes, that, for example, the Watson Break Mound in Louisiana, it dates back to like 3200 or 3400 BC. So you're talking about like 5,000 plus years ago. And that's in Louisiana. So we're talking about the mounds in Louisiana in the South that go back over 5,000 years ago. We're talking about the pyramids and the civilizations of the Oka and the Olmec and the Maya. In basic nigga terms, y'all, there is something even older than that. There is something that actually inspired that. And that's what they call in the Amaru. Okay. Despite the lack of concrete evidence to support these theories, the Gate of the Gods has become a popular destination for tourists and spiritual seekers from around the world who are drawn to the site's mysterious energy and supposed connection to the supernatural. Some visitors believe that the site is a portal to another dimension or a gateway to the spiritual realm. While the Gate of the Gods remains a source of fascination and speculation, its true purpose and origin remains a mystery. Nevertheless, its unique design and location continue to attract visitors from around the world who are intrigued by its enigmatic qualities and potential historical significance. Let me say this right now before we close. The only people that are going to ever help you figure out more history on where these mounds come from and what the use of them was, you know, the pyramids of Central America, the Olmec civilization, the Amaru, like, what does all this stuff mean? What was it used for? Why is it here? Etc., etc., etc. The only people that's going to help you answer them questions are real Aboriginal Americans, so-called Negro people, niggas, so-called Black Americans, in particular those from mainland North America, because we're the most educated, believe it or not. We're the only ones that's going to be able to help all you stupid ass foreign motherfuckers understand what this shit means. So all you dumbass niggas that's on Ancient Aliens on the History Channel, why don't you all ever have any so-called Black Americans on there? You all will learn way more about that stuff if you go talk to an old nigga in the country in Alabama. Or if you found some old woman, some old so-called Black woman from the East Coast of South Carolina. Believe it or not, they probably could tell you a whole lot more about these pyramids, and the 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 pyr than all these millions and millions and millions of dollars that you all got trying to figure out what it means. And this is why we have to actually do our due diligence to visit these places, to ponder and contemplate on these places. But the truth is, and what's really fucked up about it, and maybe one day our descendants will get this opportunity, but because these foreigners, these foreign Caucasian Europeans through the United States, these foreign Caucasian Europeans through the bleached out Latin countries like, you know, the government of Mexico, etc., because these foreigners are actually controlling the government right now, and they have their law enforcement and military blocking these, natural sites, and they've turned a lot of it into tourist attractions. And, you know, they got these gates and bars up to where you can only go so close to, you know, a lot of these ancient structures. You can't touch them, et cetera, et cetera. I hate to say it, but until we really can snatch the government back and we running this shit, we're not going to ever really be able to figure out what it is, because we need to be able to go and touch this shit, man. Like, we need to be able to, like, walk into these pyramids and take pictures, and, like, you got to really, really be with this shit, you know? That's why I understand a lot about, you know, this history as it comes to the South, because I'm really from the South. Like I showed you all in the last video, like, I'm really from the Hitchity Creek people. Like, you know, like growing up my whole life, every couple of years, man, when we would have a family reunion, it was actually on a Red Stick Creek camping ground. It was just, I didn't never know that. I didn't know that. Because you got to remember that the elders I got in my family on my mother's side that knew the history, they've died on. The last one that actually knew who we were, she died in 1997. So from 1997 all the way to now, none of my other elders know the history. You know what I'm saying? And the only one that, you know, knew what she knew was with my mother, because she told my mother certain things. So I'm going to wrap it up with that, man. Like, until we actually, man, pipe up and really gorilla glue ourselves together and realize that, man, we all bring something to the table, and everybody need to work in their particular industry so we could recreate the Mississippian civilization, so we could recreate the Maya Olmec civilization, so we could recreate the ancient Incan civilization, you know, the ancient Incan government, the ancient Mississippian government, the ancient Olmec government, because that's what the American government really is. The American government is not no United States European Christian shit. No, the American government really is the principles of the ancient Iroquois, the principles of the ancient Mississippians, the principles of the ancient Maya and Olmec. That's actually the American government, but we fucking around. We in this nigga shit. You know what I'm saying? We in this debased lower level state. And unfortunately, if you listening to this tape right now, there's a 9.5 out of 10% chance that you're not going to see this. You know, maybe our great grandchildren or whomever, like, but it won't be us. Because like I say, man, a nigga like me, man, if I could, man, I literally would grab me about an ounce of some gelato, man, or some gumbo, you know, or an ounce of some super candy or something like that. Grab me an ounce of some good marijuana, man, and I would literally just go sit in these pyramids, like, and just sit there, man. Honestly, like, I wouldn't say nothing. I would just sit there and be meditating, man, and just touching the building, like touching the actual rocks, and you know what I'm saying? Just like really interacting with it. Like, you know, matter of fact, next time, man, fuck that shit. Next time I go to my grandparents' house, I'm gonna go find a mound and I'm gonna literally just smoke and sit by it, man. Cause that's usually what I do. Whether I'm at the cemetery or if I'm deep in the woods, I like to just sit back there and just smoke and don't say nothing and just listen to the crickets, listen to the leaves, and just be with the environment. And believe it or not, y'all, that's how I learned a lot of the history. Because like I say, we are the people. We named the pyramids. We named the mounds. We named the rivers. Like I say, Maxine Waters, Doc Rivers, we the people. So all you really need to do is just go and hook up with the natural earth itself. Because like I say, whatever, you know, once again, me personally, I believe there's a higher power. And when this earth was created, we were simultaneously put here as well. So There's a connection between us and the sun, the energy of the moon, the energy of this earth, the energy of the trees, the animals. Like, these really are our relatives, or at least that's how I see it. You know what I'm saying? Like, when I see animals, when I see the stars, when I see the sun and the moon, when I see trees, when I see bushes, when I see grass, you know what I'm saying? When I see rocks, boulders, oceans, these are my relatives. Because I'm a descendant of Adam. I'm a descendant of the ancient Amaru Meru. I'm a descendant of the original people of the planet, the original men and women of the earth. Now, I don't know where they came from. You know what I'm saying? I think they got a spiritual origin. And I'm not egotistical enough to try to say I know what that is. That's why a lot of the ancestors would try to create stories like the Amaru Meru and the Gateway of the Gods, and try to create like maybe this mythological legend to try to explain our spiritual origin. But the truth is that, nah, man, like, this earth and everything on this earth that's organic and natural, if you are a so-called Black American, that's your relative. And that's how you need to see it. Like, you know, you really do, man. That's how you need to see this shit, man. 'Cause like I said, if we don't glue ourselves to the earth, if we don't glue ourselves to the history, if we don't glue ourselves to each other as people from the same ethnic national group, man, we fucked up, man. But y'all stay tuned. Rest in power to those that lost their lives in Florida. And we out.